Good morning. I'm Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich. My pronouns are they and them, and I proudly serve this congregation as the minister. So welcome to the Unitarian Society of New Haven this morning. It's so delightful to have you here. Thank you for spending some time with us today. So we often begin our services with something we call loved, living our values every day. And it's different ways that we take our values into the world and let people know about how you might get involved. So today I would like to welcome Becky Friedkin from the stewardship team.
You may note that there's more than one person up here. It's not just Becky. Welcome. Shall I? Thank you. Some of us are not so tall. I'm Peggy Ray. I'm on the stewardship team, and we are going to be talking with you in just a minute about stewardship. But I'd like to introduce other people on the team. Becky Friedkin, Linda Maida, who will be speaking later in the service, Sarah Foreman, and Holly Hawkins, who is at work right now and can't be with us, but is with us in spirit. So what does stewardship mean? It's taking good care of something. In our case, that something is USNH, and we are, all of us, its stewards. That stewardship allows us to live our values in tangible and empowering ways. Most of you know by now that it's pledge season, that time of year when we renew our covenant with USNH, as well as our membership in USNH, by making a pledge of financial support for the 2022-23 fiscal year, which begins on July 1st. You may also know that there is a large gap between our projected revenues, about 75% of which come from our pledges, and our projected expenses. And there's no fat in our operating budget. For more than 2 years, we've been living through a very difficult time, and although we have not always been able to be together in community in the ways we want and need, USNH continues.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I want to continue by saying that as we face this budget challenge, it is helpful to remember that we have come through hard times before at USNH, and we will get through this financial challenge, especially if each of us contributes even a little bit more to next year's operating budget, if we work together in community to make ends meet. As someone once said, everyone is trying to accomplish something big, not realizing that life is made up of little things. If every household contributes an additional $140 for fiscal year 23 as a one-time gift or as a pledge increase, we could close the budget gap. Some can give more, some can give less. No gift is too small, because if we all give something, whatever we can, it adds up.
Your financial support is the foundation of everything we do at USNH, and what we do matters, both for this community and beyond 700 Hartford Turnpike. Please join the stewardship team in promising a one-time gift or increasing your pledge by filling out a form when you leave the sanctuary. Forms will be available right outside the door in the lobby. For those of you at home, the form is available online by going to bit.ly/FY23gift. All caps, FY23GIFT. You can also send a check to USNH or put one in the collection plate. Please note FY23 gift on the memo line so we can track how we do. And check out the vines on the lobby windows with names or pictures of everyone who's pledged. Anyone can make a financial pledge for FY23. Fill out or pick up a form and help grow the vines. So far, we've heard from 10-12% of us, and we need something from everyone, like the stone soup story. If we each contribute something, even a pinch of salt, we'll create something that's much greater than the sum of its parts. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you on this beautiful, beautiful day, whether you're here in person or by Zoom. Thanks for coming in. It's a little tempting out there. I am Lisa Anderson and your worship associate today. I open with the words of Reverend Sharon Wiley. Let us speak today of wholeness. You are welcome here, all of you. Every part of you is beautiful, just the way you are. I'd like to invite into this beloved space our ancestors who founded USNH and then fed it, our community, during the past 70 years. We would not be sitting here today without their love and commitment to us. And let us remember our own ancestors, related or not, who nourished us. They too are here with us today. This service has been created in part by our amazing musicians, Jeff Dalma. I've been practicing that, just want you to know. And Erica Sharath, Bill Braun, and our USNH choir. In addition to Reverend Linda Susan, Jesse Grice, Jamie Ross, and the Sunday morning team, I want to extend a special welcome and deep appreciation to our stewardship team and Linda Mehta, who will speak with her stewardship testimonial. And also deep appreciation to Rob Cam and Mary Donahue, who are doing the tech support. A reminder of our COVID protocols. Please wear your mask inside the building. And then outside, we do have refreshments. And I understand there's a very yummy and a little bit healthy muffin, these are Sandra's description, for sale by the kids service team to support World Central Kitchen in their efforts to help the Ukrainian refugees. Now, please make sure your electronic devices are securely settled into worship mode and as our service continues with a call to worship. The call to worship today is entitled Earth and All, and the author is Reverend Dr. David Breeden. We join together, bringing both our shadow and our light. We join together, opening our minds and our hearts. We join together, embracing, celebrating, sharing the beauty of each, the beauty of self, the beauty of the earth, the beauty of all.
So each week, we light a chalice, which is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It joins us with people across time, across location, where each of us are sparking a flame that warms our community, that lights our way. Something else that's central to Unitarian Universalism is our covenant, which we recite together each week in an abbreviated form, as a way of reminding ourselves that this is how we are agreeing to be with each other in this community. It's the promises that we make to each other and come back to and renew week after week that build this community and help us keep it healthy and strong. Now, living in covenant isn't the simplest thing. It takes some work. But it's the good kind of work. It's the right kind of hard, as I like to say. Conflict is inevitable in any human institution, but it's what we do with it. It's how we work with it. It's how we strengthen relationship through it. That is really key. So please join me now in reciting the words found in your order of service or in the chat on the live stream. Together, let us say, we covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, seek humor and joy.
We invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 77, Seek Not Afar for Beauty.
Good morning, I'm Jesse Grice, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and this past week, my family and I had a chance to go back to the place where my two sons were born and where my wife Sandra is from, Costa Rica. And while we were there, on our last day, I had a chance to take two photographs. These photographs were taken about an hour, just under an hour apart from each other. I was walking around outside of Tenorio National Forest, which, for those of you that may have been to Costa Rica or know, is by a huge volcano called Tenorio Volcano. And it has one of the most richest diversities of life that you can find on the planet. About 6% of all the diversity of life can be found in this one forest. And while I was there, I came across a creature that in the 8 years that I lived in Costa Rica, I never saw before. It's a kind of a frog called a tiger tree frog. And when I first saw it at about 4:30 in the morning, it was still dark outside, and the first picture that I took came out like this. This is the tiger tree frog. And it was sitting up, it was alert, it was kind of showing itself off to the world. And I'm going to put this picture right here for a minute so you can keep looking at it. Because when I returned at the end of my walk, about 45 minutes later, that same tree frog was sitting in the exact same place, but this time it looked like this. The sun was starting to come up, and she had curled herself up for the day. And I realized later when I was sitting in my room getting ready for our trip back to the US that frog, without meaning to, was really telling me a very important story. It's a story about beauty. Because in the first picture, the first time I saw that frog was standing up and sharing its beauty with those around her. And it reminded me of the way that we people, when we want people to see our beauty, we might stand up, we might put on a nice tie or some nice clothes, we might put on some makeup, we might do our hair, we might do different things to share our beauty with the world, but it doesn't just stop with the physical stuff. I mean, we sometimes share our beauty in the world through how we walk, through how we make eye contact with each other, through how we smile, through how we sing or talk, how we have conversations. The list goes on and on. There are so many ways to extend the beauty that is within ourselves to others around us. And this tiger tree frog was kind of showing me how it's done. When I came back and saw the frog just 45 minutes later, it reminded me that there are absolutely times in each of our lives when we crouch down, when we huddle up, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And the message that we give to the world around us is, please don't see me. I'm not really into being in contact with you right now. And it made me think, if I had gone up to this frog, I mean, I did definitely invade her space by taking this photograph, but if I had tried to poke her with a stick and try to get her to stand up and show me her beauty, if I had said, as so many of us say when we see somebody who's in that, we perceive that they are in that crouching space, they're in that hidden space, if we say to somebody at that moment, oh, come on, smile, stand up, show your beauty to the world. In many ways, when we say those things to somebody who is in that crouching space, what we do is we're asking themselves to be vulnerable, to be exposed. And the experience they can have is fear. So the frog was really telling me in so many ways, when I'm showing you my beauty, tell me I'm beautiful. Take a picture of me. Share it with a whole bunch of strangers in a different country. But when that frog is crouched down, its message is very clear. Let me be here with my beauty alone. And one other thought I had in seeing the frog there. When we are in those crouching spaces, when we are huddled up, whether it's we're in a crowd but feeling kind of lonely or alone, or when we're actually physically by ourselves, and we're huddled up like that and we don't want to be seen, that may be the most important time for us to recognize and know our own beauty within ourselves. That's the time for you to tell yourself, no one can see me, no one's going to tell me I'm beautiful right now, but I am. I am. And my friends, you are. I invite the children and young people to come out to their classes with me at this time. If you are in 4th grade or younger, your classes are going to be outside this morning. There are 2 groups, the kindergarten and 1st grade, 2nd grade are all going to be behind me outside the sanctuary. 3rd and 4th graders are out on the island in the parking lot. And then the older children can go to their OWL classes. So children, rise up and let's leave this space together.
Now is the time in the service where we share our joys and sorrows. With sadness, we share with you that Chuck Porter died on April 20th. He was a cherished USNH member and a former professor at Yale where he served in a number of roles, including Director of Undergraduate Studies with a focus on French literature. I knew Chuck as a fellow at Saybrook College. He will be missed. Ellen Mahoney is currently at Whitney Manor for rehab after undergoing ankle surgery. She would very much appreciate calls and visits. And Tom Harden has been hospitalized recently after having a series of falls. He is now at Masonic Care Rehab, and he also would appreciate cards and calls. You can contact Jamie Ross for further information. Together, let us give thanks for this community of care.
So I invite you, including you, yes, hi Roland. I invite you into a spirit of meditation, prayer, or contemplation of ultimate things. There is so much hurting in the world right now, whether in Ukraine, as so many of us have been following, in Syria, so many places around the globe. There are also our private hurts that maybe we haven't told anyone. Maybe we're carrying them in our hearts. But within that, there is still beauty, because it means that there's something we love, something that means something to us. We have not become so numb that our hearts can no longer break. So in the moments of silence that follow, let us just practice being open-hearted. Let us share some silence together. Together, let us give thanks for open hearts. Let us give thanks for the joy of new life. And let us give thanks simply for being together. Amen.
I'm Linda Mehta, and I am on the Stewardship Committee. And I'd like to tell you about my experience as a UU and what it's meant. When I was a child, the church my family attended in Rockford, Illinois, was called the Church of the Christian Union. That union, formed in 1870, being one between the Unitarians and the Universalists, along with some renegade Baptists. In 1913, it called a Congregationalist minister, Charles Parker Connolly, to its pulpit. During his ministry, he helped launch the church into ambitious social action. He also shepherded the congregation through difficult times, to say the least. World War I, the Great Depression, the rise of Hitler. He retired in 1942, before I was born, no doubt in order to have more time to enjoy being Sally Connolly's grandfather. It's no wonder USNH felt like home to me. A bust of Dr. Connolly stood in the sanctuary up front, next to the organ my mother played, so I couldn't help but see it. On the pedestal were the words, "And the greatest of these is love." I knew what the words said long before I could read them myself, and those words, "And the greatest of these is love," filled me with warmth and invited contemplation long before I understood much of the rest of the service. I was in a place of love where love was important enough to be mentioned prominently in my church. Knowing the importance and centrality of love supported me during my childhood, and that love was manifested in many more ways than by words on a plaque. Help in times of grief and difficulty, educational and emotional support, good examples and advice, singing in choir rehearsals as a toddler with a Mrs. Pollock, Verna Anderson's cookies and Swedish coffee cake, and simply sharing joy, music, and fun, all undergirded by that love. My experience of being a Unitarian Universalist from early childhood demonstrates the support we can give the youngest of our congregation now and even into their septuagenarian years. Our local church, and our denomination have a much broader reach than the individuals who are members or attend our services today, extending farther back than the Adamses and the Alcotts. These times may turn out to be as challenging as those Dr. Connolly led the Rockford Church through. And our perspectives, our accumulated wisdom, our shared actions will be deeply valuable. We are a small denomination, but we have a disproportionate impact on our world. This is one reason why, even though I lost my job during the pandemic, I still pledge to USNH. It depends on each of us, to the best of our ability, to keep it going. Thank you.
So let us use this time to reflect on the themes of joy and love and home and commitment lifted up so beautifully by Linda Mehta and the stewardship team. We gather to be comforted, but not always to be comfortable. I appreciate that discussions about money may bring up difficult feelings. But what is in your heart right now? What do you need to do? If your pledge is aligned with what you were capable of doing, that's great. And that's exactly the place we want everyone to be. If that's not the case and you can reach deeper, then this is the time for further action. Right now. We're the ones who must ensure USNH's future for us, our families, our community, and the beautiful world we are trying to create together. I encourage you to be as generous as you can in making a donation by either dropping it in the plate at the end of the service, giving through our website at usnh.org, or sending a check. Thank you for your support of the staff, our programs, and our future. And now for some announcements. If you're visiting for the first time, or perhaps you're new enough to USNH that you have some questions about Unitarian Universalism and our congregation, you can join us today, right after the service in the library, for our monthly visitors chat, and this is sponsored by the membership team. Another opportunity is to join the Covenantal Relations Committee's listening circle today, after the service at 11:40, between 11:40 and 12:30 in the social hall, to discuss our monthly theme, Nurturing Beauty. Bernice Marie Daly and Nancy Apfel will co-facilitate. What do you see as beautiful? What does the phrase nurturing beauty mean to you? What do you see as beautiful within yourself? Come and enrich the discussion with your thoughts about how to nurture what is beautiful in our battered and tumultuous world and in our pandemic-weary hearts. And do remember the spring cleanup, I guess that makes us beautiful on the outside, which will take place next Saturday with the details in the newsletter. Beauty is all around us, clearly. Beauty awakens and admonishes us. These words are by the Reverend Mary Catherine Morin. Beauty awakens and admonishes us. We are here in religious community not to hide from the anguished cries or the tender lullabies. We are here in religious communities not to protect our hearts from breaking. We are here together to borrow courage for the task of coming alive. We are here so that together we might hear the admonitions of beauty, answer the call to create, protect, and preserve.
Nifty little feature there. So I lived in San Francisco for over 20 years, and most of that time was in the Mission District, a lively, dynamic, gritty neighborhood that ran the gamut on class, race, queerness, ethnicity, disability, you name it, the whole 9 yards. And to give you an idea of the range I'm talking about, our little side street, which ran parallel to Mission Street, the main thoroughfare, at one point regularly had used needles on the sidewalk at the same time as it had more BMWs and Mercedes than previously. Now, the 14 Mission bus was the main route connecting the neighborhood to downtown, and you were just as likely to hear people speaking Spanish or Mandarin or Tagalog as you were English. You might hear Cantonese or Russian or Arabic. There were plenty of legitimate complaints that you could make about the 14, but the cross-section of humanity you were likely to encounter was unparalleled. One day, I had a mystical experience on the 14, and which you need to understand was not the most likely location for such a thing. But I happened to look at someone and couldn't tell whether the person was Latino or Asian. And my brain wanted to categorize the person, as human brains are wired to do, but instead, my perception cracked open. And suddenly, as I watched people getting on and off the bus and walking past my seat and talking to each other, I could see, almost like it was glowing beneath the surface. I could see the commonalities beneath all the different facial structures and skin colors and life experiences. I felt how profoundly connected humans are to each other. The unity across humanity without erasing our distinctiveness. It made it impossible to ever truly divide the world into us and them again. Those few minutes of seeing, feeling, understanding changed me. Looking back on it, one of the striking elements of the experience was that each person was beautiful. It didn't matter how they looked, or how they dressed, or how they smelled. There was a deep beauty in each one of those faces simply because that person existed on this planet at that moment. That connection between beauty and justice is no coincidence, according to Professor Elaine Scarry. Her work on beauty and being just, which informs much of what I'm going to talk about today, talks about the ways that beauty works on us. She begins by asking the question, what is the felt experience of cognition at the moment one stands in the presence of a beautiful boy or flower or bird? It seems to incite, even to require, the act of replication. Beauty brings copies of itself into being. Now, this can take many forms. We may draw it, photograph it, describe it to someone else, reference it in our writing, compose music about it, or even just stare at it, thereby replicating the beautiful thing across time rather than in a different form. As Scarry notes, this impulse towards a distribution across perceivers is, as both museums and postcards verify, the most common response to beauty. Making Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night available to the public to view, or sending a picture of the Grand Canyon with "Wish You Were Here" written on the back. These are ways of sharing beauty. Simone Weil, a French philosopher and religious thinker from the early 20th century, wrote, "The love of the beauty of the world involves the love of all the truly precious things that bad fortune can destroy." The love of the beauty of the world involves the love of all the truly precious things that bad fortune can destroy. That kind of fragility asks us to protect what is beautiful. There's something not just shocking, but physically painful when we think of, say, a beloved painting being cut with a knife, or trees in a rainforest getting bulldozed. This illustrates one of the key features of beauty, according to Scarry. Beauty is sacred. It's connected to the realm of the immortal, even when the person or object itself is finite. Another key feature is that beauty is unprecedented. Beautiful things fill the mind and break all frames, giving rise to a never before in the history of the world feeling, writes Scarry. And if you've ever been, say, a teenager who's passionate about a certain band, the Police, you might recognize what I'm talking about, that enthusiasm, that just, this is the past. Now, the beautiful thing or being may share certain features with other beings or things that have come before, but it's unique in its particularities. When I rode the number 14 bus that day, I'd seen faces like the ones I saw thousands of times before, but I'd never seen those faces in that way. A third key feature of beauty is that it's life-saving. Beauty quickens, writes Scarry. It adrenalizes. It makes the heart beat faster. It makes life more vivid, animated, living, worth living. As Rita Nakashima Brock and Rebecca Parker note in their brilliant work, Saving Paradise, beauty and art, in all its forms, engage the more holistic, emotional, and sensory-laden dimensions of experience and memory. They capture multi-layered experiences of imagination, feeling, perceiving, thinking. Through art, the aesthetic, emotional, sensory, and intellectual dimensions of life can come together and be mixed in fresh ways. The authors discovered this life-giving aspect of beauty as they researched the imagery used in the early Christian churches. And what they discovered astonished them. There weren't any corpses. Literally, the crucifixion simply did not appear. What the churches did show were images of verdant gardens, flowing rivers, orchards, flowers, birds, flocks of sheep, with Jesus as healer or friend or shepherd, and very much alive. As the men in the empty tomb say to the women who come to attend Jesus' body, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but he has risen." This ties in with We's notion that beautiful things act like small tears in the surface of the world that pull us through to some vaster space. Let me say that again, because I love it so much. Beautiful things act like small tears in the surface of the world that pull us through to some vaster space. Or as Scarry put it, they lead the perceiver to a more capacious regard for the world. A mosaic on the apse of a church, for example, can point us towards paradise existing here on earth in those verdant gardens and flowing rivers and orchards. At the moment we see something beautiful, she writes, we undergo a radical decentering. We cease to stand even at the center of our own world. We willingly cede our ground to the thing that stands before us. And this isn't a bad thing, though. It takes us out of our narrow selves and widens our perspective. And with that in place, the leap to justice isn't far behind. Now, before we find our way there, though, I want us to go through the looking glass for a moment. What if beauty were absent from our lives? Scarry calls the absence of beauty a profound form of deprivation. In the German concentration camps during World War II, not much beauty existed, much less justice. The prisoners' world grew small, with little in their day-to-day lives offering an opening to Vey's wider space. Yet still, there were people who created works of art. Pianist Karl Polnack talks about it this way. One of the most profound musical compositions of all time is the Quartet for the End of Time, written by French composer Olivier Messiaen in 1940. Messiaen was 31 years old when France entered the war against Nazi Germany. He was captured by the Germans in June of 1940, sent across Germany in a cattle car, and imprisoned in a concentration camp. He was fortunate to find a sympathetic prison guard who gave him paper and a place to compose. There were 3 other musicians in the camp, a cellist, a violinist, and a clarinetist, and Messiaen wrote his quartet with these specific players in mind. It was performed in January 1941 for 4,000 prisoners and guards in the prison camp. Today, it is one of the most famous masterworks in the repertoire. Given what we have since learned about life in the concentration camps, why would anyone in his right mind waste time and energy writing or playing music? There was barely enough energy on a good day to find food and water, to avoid a beating, to stay warm, to escape torture. Why would anyone bother with music? And yet, from the camps, we have poetry, we have music, we have visual art. It wasn't just this one fanatic, Messiaen. Many, many people created art. Why? Well, in a place where people are only focused on survival, on the bare necessities, the obvious conclusion is that art must be somehow essential for life. The camps were without money, without hope, without commerce, without recreation, without basic respect, but they were not without art. Art is part of survival. Art is a part of the human spirit, an unquenchable expression of who we are. Art is one of the ways in which we say, I am alive and my life has meaning. Scarry talks about the way that the beholder and the beheld bestow the gift of life on each other. Each affirms the other's aliveness. For example, when I stand in front of Vincent's Starry Night, I feel myself transported to that French countryside, looking past cypress trees towards a village with its prominent church steeple and houses nestled within the nearby hills. The brushstrokes depicting the sky lend a movement that suggests wind and add a shimmer to the moon and stars. The one time I saw the painting in person, its sheer beauty moved me to tears. I felt more alive at the same time as my perception brought the painting to life. There's a reciprocity, which brings us back to justice. Now, another word we use to talk about it is fairness, which John Rawls defines as symmetry of everyone's relations to each other. Now, as it happens, fairness is also a word we use to describe something that's pleasing to the sight. They're related etymologically, though the aesthetic sense actually predates the ethical sense by several hundred years. So let's gather up some of the threads about beauty that we've discussed. Beauty distributes itself through a variety of means. It's sacred and life-saving. There's a reciprocity and a symmetry to it, as well as an expansiveness. And beauty helps us get out of our own way by moving us out of the center of every story. Indeed, we happily move out of the center and spread the word. When we're in such a state, then we've also got the conditions in which justice can flourish. The enlarging of the spirit that we feel in the presence of beauty admonishes us, as we heard in today's reading, to answer the call to create, protect, and preserve. We can grasp beauty with our senses in a way that we can't with something abstract and diffuse like justice. So our embodied experience of beauty gives us an analogy we can work with. Our felt sense of the fitness of a form helps us assess the fitness of a law. You can kind of tell when something, has that elegance to it, has that rightness to it. We learn that from beauty, but we can apply it to justice. Similarly, Scary notes that the two distinguishable forms of creating beauty, perpetuating beauty that already exists and originating beauty that does not yet exist, have equivalence in the realm of justice. We are called to protect justice where it currently exists, such as the right to abortion, and to build justice where it hasn't yet been established, such as the right to adequate housing. May each of us tap into the deep well of beauty that permeates this life, whether we find it in the branches of a tree, the curves of a sculpture, a composition from a concentration camp, or the faces of everyday people riding a bus, unaware that they've changed the world. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
This morning, we ask you to make one small change to the words of hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land. In the refrain, we'll sing, Come build a land where neighbors and strangers, anointed by God, may then create peace. Erica and I will demonstrate that refrain for you once, and then we invite you to rise in body or in spirit and begin at the start of verse 1. Come build a land where neighbors and strangers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Come read the words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, beauty is more than prettiness or handsomeness. Beauty goes deep. It goes to the core of our humanity. Let us place it there in service of the people around us, of the beings on this earth, the earth itself, where justice will roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. So go forth, my friends, with courage and with kindness, and be a blessing to this broken and beautiful world. Amen.